Brahma Gurur Vishnu Guru Devo Meshwara Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Chinmayam Dhyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Jai Guru Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Has Aditi joined us? Guess not. Can you all hear me in Zoom land?
Yes.
All right. Aditi is not with us, so Mauricio has come and has generously volunteered to read the shlokas, the Sanskrit. So we are on chapter 1, verse 11.
Muktabhimani mukto hibatu bhadabhimanyapi kim vadanti ha satyayam ya mati sagatir bhave. He who considers himself free becomes free indeed, and he who considers himself bound remains bound. As one thinks, so one becomes, is a proverbial saying in this world, and it is indeed quite true.
So it's very interesting. In the Christian tradition, there's a saying from Jesus that goes, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Doesn't occur anywhere in Jewish scripture that I know of, but it's certainly here as a proverbial saying within the Vedanta tradition. Why? Because what we see of the world is nothing but the outpicturing of our deeply rooted attitudes. Mind is the world is the mind. He's also going back to that idea. What is bondage and what is liberation? There is no other bondage than the deeply rooted conviction that I'm bound. Meaning, I think I'm my body. I think I'm my mind. I think I'm the child of my parents, the employee of my boss, the partner of my partner, etc. All those ideas. From that, I take the phenomenal world as real and data comes in, and then I endeavor to protect self. That's my bondage. That's my bondage. What is liberation? There is no other liberation than the deeply rooted conviction. Not that I'm a realized person. The Mahavakya does not say, Aham Mahatma, No, it says aham brahmasmi. When I see that no personal sense of self is real, there's nothing to protect. The self is ever pure, ever untouched, ever inviolate. And I don't believe the mind when it throws up ideas of a personal sense of self or a phenomenal world that's solid in self. So what we're driving at here, we worked on this last week. It is not an ontological problem. It's not that I, Jim, am a miserable, suffering person, and I need to become a better person. I need to protect or expand or do whatever I need to do to become better. Go to your psychologist if that's your golden life. Yoga says, drop that. Drop this idea. Then there's nothing left to protect. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Atma sakshi vibhu purna eko mukta chittadakriya asango nishpriha shanto brahmat sansaravanyada. The self is witness, all-pervading, perfect, non-dual, free, consciousness, actionless, unattached, desireless, and quiet. Through illusion, it appears as if it is absorbed in the world.
Yes. So the self is sakshi. So in the beginning, we give you the assignment, sakshi bhava, take on the attitude or the feeling of the witness. Actually, we lie. You always are the witness. To take on sakshi bhava actually means I start to pay attention to the fact that I'm always the witness. Physical things never touch me. Emotional things never touch me. Ideas never touch me. I am asanga, unattached to any. And I'm having a senior moment. What's the second part of the verse again?
Through illusion, it appears as if absorbed in the world.
Yes. So the self is never really threatened. It's never really violated. It only seems to be so because of ignorance, because of delusion. Now, this is not simple ignorance like, oh, I don't know who my assemblyman is. It's not that kind of ignorance. It's, again, the great example is, how does the dream personality form? I go to sleep, so I have the non-apprehension of myself as the waker. Then the mind projects a dream body, which becomes a locus of perception, where I see a dream world, name and form. And inside I have dream thoughts and feelings. And I have a dream ego identified with that dream body. To my dream ego, the dream seems very, very real. But all of the elements are just projections of the mind. And Vedanta thunders, this is no difference. What's real? You tune up the mind. Just listen to the traffic. See if you can notice who or what hears the traffic. See, there's nothing there. Yet it shines as Prakash, the light of pure awareness. Now, where did that ego go? Where did the person go? I have my rights. I have boundaries. It's gone. Because it's not a real thing. Now, Shrunahu, listen carefully. The difference between the dreamer and the waker is a gross shift in identity. You're dreaming away, and all of a sudden the alarm goes off, and whang, you wake up. Dream gone. The shift between the ego and knowing I am Brahman is extremely subtle. Doesn't mean it's not profound. It's just this shift. Notice there's nobody there. And the individuality disappears just as assuredly as the dreamer disappears. That doesn't happen in class, when you're meditating, when you're reading scripture. This means we need to do more tapas. That's all. More renunciation, more disidentification. And one of the things that I invite us always to look at, if I'm disturbed, it's Guru poking. It means I have an attachment, an expectation, an identification. I'm trying to secure self in some way. Don't you know who I am? You can't do that to me. And again, the psychologist's approach is different than the yogi's approach. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Kutastam bodham advaitam atmanam paribhavaya abhaso ham brahmam muktva bhavam baham athantaram. Having given up all external and internal fluctuations and the illusion I am the reflected self ego, meditate upon the self as immutable non-dual consciousness.
So when we give up external, what does it say, fluctuations?
Yes.
Okay. So understand that when we're in deep meditation, in your meditation seat, you want to turn down the frequency and the volume of thought so that we can begin to see the space between the thoughts. Then you can get the intimation. Who or what is it that sees both the thoughts and the space between? But there's another way to look at this verse. What are the mental fluctuations that concern us? If we go back to Viveka Chudamani, and we talk about the 4 qualifications of a fit student, becoming adhikari, Viveka, Vairagya, then the gang of 6, Shamadhi Guna, Chatsampati. First one, Shama. Being able to keep the energy intensely introverted, not letting the mind gush out into the sense objects. How? I keep understanding the inherent defects of the world. Temporary. Whatever joy they give is momentary and finite as best. Nobody out there has the power to make me feel anything. Parent, partner, employer, colleague, all of it. Just my reaction to phenomena. Dhamma, not letting the mind be pushed out because of the memory of prior sensory experiences. So as we're functioning through the world, we're just empty. Now, listen carefully. Guru is a principle. Swamiji would say that the external teacher is a temporary psychological device. The real guru is within you, and the guru assuredly is in the world. So if you have set in motion, I want self-realization. Guess what Guru as the world is going to do? Oh, so you have an attachment here? Here, look. Oh, you have an identification there? Here, look. Poke, poke, poke. And if we miss it, if we run, if we protect, if we defend, the Lord, as Guru says, oh, you missed it that time. No worries. It'll come around again. Let me prove this to you. Who's gotten upset this week about anything? Tell me it's the first time you've had this feeling. Tell me this is the first dance like this. You're like most of us. This is not the first time. Ego says play whack-a-mole with the world. You've hurt me. You've upset me. You need to change. Yoga says, I need to let it go. Any thoughts on this? It's interesting. I can't recall anywhere in scripture that talks about our rights. Can you think of anything, Mauricio, that you've read?
No.
Talk about duty a lot, but they never, it's just not a yogic concept. Rights is a very Western kind of thing. My rights, my protections. All right, next verse.
Ehabhimanapashena chiramba dosi putraka Podoham jana kangena tanishkritya sukhi bhava. My dear son, you have been bound by the rope of your body consciousness. Render it asunder with the sword of knowledge. I am consciousness, and be happy.
So, what is my bondage? The deeply rooted conviction that I'm bound. Meaning, I'm convinced I'm my body. It is no different than when I think I'm the dream body. No different at all. Cut it asunder. We start by what we call paroksha jnana, indirect knowledge. You hear the truth from the teacher, you read the truth in the scripture. You tune into the truth on YouTube. We have faith. We believe it. But then comes long and continuous meditation. Abhyasa vairagya. That's all right there. Continue practice. Continue let go. Let go. Till we over and over again get that sense there's nothing there. There's no issue. There's nothing to protect. There's nothing to defend. Any thoughts?
I have a question, please. There is a selfishness inherent in trying to be of service to others and please everyone. Right?
There can be. We call that codependence. If I'm okay if other people like me, if I'm okay if other people approve of me, if I'm okay because I'm getting strokes from the world, that then is an attachment. Yes. But in the Christian canon, we talk about when you give alms, don't let anybody know. Do it in secret. So the idea is do seva, do service for the sake of service. For example, in program, we've all seen people who are secretary and it's all about them. They're doing service because they want people to see them in a leadership role. Then other people do service and like the job gets done, but there's a transparency. It's not about them. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it isn't the service that's the issue. It's the motivation. And does that make it a little clearer?
Mhm.
And in the end, you know, there's the famous story of Marpa and Milarepa, where he builds the Tower of Stones and he's told to tear it down. Build the Tower of Stones and tear it down, until he quits doing it for any reason at all. And the teacher smacks him with the sand and he wakes up. Very good question. Now, none of us starts doing sadhana purely. Better you should do service with ego than want everybody to wait on you. Does that make sense? And in the end, you start giving that up. Because if you're doing service with ego because you want approval, you will, I promise you, have the experience where someone doesn't approve of you. And then what's going to happen inside? You're going to react. And what's our axiom? If I'm disturbed, it's their fault. Is that how it goes? No.
I have a question on that.
Yes, ma'am.
I could easily see this though being distorted in the type of relationship where, let's say, one person has authority over another. They could easily justify, well, I'm being a jerk to this person, but they could believe, the person that they're being a jerk to could believe, well, if I'm agitated, I'm the one with attachment. The person being a jerk doesn't actually have to change, right? Isn't that possible? It's not to self-justify those sort of actions.
You can never change other people.
But what I'm saying is, my concern is, especially in guru-disciple relationships, which we've seen over and over again, the disciple might justify that it's okay for the teacher to act like a jerk over time because the student believes,
then you
well,
leave. If you have determined that this is not the right teacher for you, you leave. Find someone who is.
so the teacher basically has no need ever to stop being a jerk in that case.
That's not what I said. If the teacher has kleshas, afflictions, or doshas, then they need to work it out in their yoga.
Okay, I just want to make sure this wasn't some sort of, it's only on one side.
Everything is on one side in yoga. Always. We can't do other people's yoga. And if we think the problem is there are jerks in my life, they need to change. Think, if someone is being what I think of as a jerk and they're hurting me.
It's more the concern of hypocrisy, that's all.
It's what?
The more the concern of hypocrisy.
More of the concern of hypocrisy. Is
Correct.
it your job to discern the hypocrisy of other people?
No, but it's also one's job to be discerning so that there's no gaslighting.
Well, if you're concerned, find another teacher.
Correct. That is actually the appropriate action, yes.
That is the appropriate action. Always. Now, Swamiji would do things that hurt me, that would embarrass me. Frequently.
Embarrassment, I think, is a different thing. I think hurtful words can sometimes undermine a lot of trust between people's relationships.
He would say things that were hurtful.
Would he apologize?
No.
I would. But maybe that's just me and how I relate with people.
Mhm. But for me, if I'm hurt,
And if I'm a jerk, I apologize as well. I think it's got to be on both sides. Because just because someone has reached a certain state doesn't allow them to get away with the jerk card. That's my personal belief system. Because otherwise it's too easy to justify. If I hurt somebody, I can't be like, well, you're agitated, so therefore you're the one with the attachments. That's true, but I also would apologize for my actions as well if I feel that I'm in the wrong. And if the person doesn't feel like I'm in the wrong, that's also okay as well. Then there's different values involved.
have more.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Next verse.
Nisango nishkriyo sitvam svaprakasho niranjana ayam eva hite bhanda samadhi manutishtasi. You are unattached, actionless, self-effulgent, and without any taints. You practice meditation, in quotes, and this is indeed your bondage.
So we have to be very careful. This is why this is such an advanced text. What he's saying here is quit meditating. So let's put this in the pedagogical frame of sadhana. So Mauricio and I last night started Viveka Chudamani from the beginning. And in the beginning, Shankara allows us to be identified with the body. The value of a human birth, attaining full manhood, meaning the warrior spirit here. How lucky you are, don't waste having a human birth. Then he will subtly shift it. Approach to the teacher, and then we have the qualifications of a fit student. So what he's done is he's shifted our identification from the physical body to the subtle body. We become adhikari. Viveka vairagya samadhi guna mumukshutva. Then we spend a whole lot of time discriminating between the self and the not self. We have the two great paradigms, the three bodies, gross body, subtle body, causal body, the five koshas, food sheath, energy sheath, mind sheath, intellectual sheath, bliss sheath. And at the acme of that practice, the Shishya says, once I've negated everything, there's nothing left. He says, look, you're right. And then he starts to describe the self as that grounded being, space of consciousness. It goes on for some time. Then, back in about the last quarter of the book, Shankara says, well, actually we lied. There is no not self. What we've been calling the not self is actually the self. So we now work on seeing the self in and through the objects. It's all perfect. It's all God. It's all real. It's nothing to get upset about. So that our bliss is not just confined to our meditation. So the world doesn't agitate us anymore. Then he starts talking about the fundamental unreality of everything, of the mind itself. So the metaphor here is it smashan? Is that the cremation ground? So we're cremating the ego. My way, my priorities, what I think, my values, everything. That's the corpse. It's really a dead thing. And the stick that we use to stir the funeral pyre is the yogi. It's the mumukshu. It's the meditator. So we are still hanging on to this identity. I am a yogi. I'm a spiritual seeker. And what this scripture is talking about is when the ego is all roasted, there's no fingers and toes even left. Then you throw the stick of the yogi up to the fire. Nothing in this world is real. Only I is real. Now, if you take on this practice too soon, you fall into what I call the Vedanta logic loop. Scripture says, give up the meditator, give up practice. Both bondage is an illusion, enlightenment is illusion, only the self is real. So the fact that I'm reacting to the world, don't worry about it, it's unreal. I might as well just, have 3 shots of scotch. That fixes everything. That's unreal. So you might as well do that. Why do yoga at all? Why do meditate? It's all unreal. And what that attitude does is rationalize our suffering. So we have to understand where it is in the progression of our sadhana. The way Swami Tejamayananda used to say is, you can't renounce something you don't have. So he used to say, I woke up this morning and I renounced being president of the United States. It's nonsense. He was never president. Never was going to be president. So don't give up your samadhi until you have samadhi. And it's just a mind state, let it go. So the corollary to this, the sadhak, the seeker, is seen to be doing spiritual practices so that she may purify her mind and realize the self. But the jnani may also be seen to be doing spiritual practices. This does not add to their knowledge of the self. They do it because it's the highest form of worldly pleasure. Very subtle point. So what the scripture's inviting us to do is right here, right now. Can you let go of the yogi? Can you let go of the student? The guru? Let go of everything. Let all our strivings cease. Simply abides the self. Any thoughts on this? This is why Swamiji said that he almost wishes he hadn't written a commentary for this book, taught it, because so many people misunderstand it and give up sadhana and are just satisfied with this intellectual understanding. How are we doing? All right, next verse.
Tvaya vyaktam idam vishvam tvayi protam yathartah Shuddha buddha swarupastvam magamma kshudrachittatam. You pervade this universe, and this universe is strung or woven only in you. Really, by nature, you are pure consciousness. Do not give way to petty-mindedness.
Yeah. So, I pervade this phenomenal universe, meaning all it is pratibimba, just images reflecting consciousness. Now, the mind is ruled by the law of inertia. Law of inertia is that a body in a vacuum at motion or at rest will stay at motion or rest until energy is applied to change it. So here he's saying that if we have the habit of petty-mindedness, I'm a person, you are separate from me. My happiness is dependent upon what you say or do. My sorrow is dependent on what you say or do. This is petty-mindedness. This is my problem. Let it go. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Nirapeksho nirvikaro nirbhara shila lashaya aghada bhutir akshumto bhava chinmatra vasana. You are unconditioned, changeless, dense, of profound intelligence, serene and unperturbed, desire consciousness alone.
Yes. So this is a vijnana ghanam, a homogeneous, dense mass of awareness. You've all seen me bring out the crystal ball. Hold it up, you see the images. Are the images in the crystal ball or not? Well, they're certainly seen. They're not really there. All this stuff appears in consciousness. Then he says, desire consciousness alone. So we go back to what I call the pleasure principle. In the beginning, we talked about our pedagogical journey. At one point, Shankara will say, give up sense objects, give up your attachment to them. They're like a poisonous snake, nasty old sense objects, nasty old sense objects. Well, it's not the total truth. The truth is the sense objects are void. They're neither good nor bad, completely empty. The only joy is the bliss of the self, the mind ceasing its craving, its longing, its wanting, its desire, its insistences, its expectations. When I give that up, either by getting my object of desire, then you get a bit of it temporarily, or by letting go of the world altogether. What we want to do is understand that what I'm looking for is my self-nature. So there's an assignment in this. Watch your mind. Watch what it feels like to want something you don't have. To want the world different than it is. How's it working out for you? It sucks. Not getting what I want. The world's disappointed me. People, places, things, and conditions. When I think my happiness comes from that. Then, own your own ananda. When you have gotten what you want, notice, watch your mind. What's that feel like? Oh, that's a taste of myself. Whether it's beautiful music, whether it's hanging out with a friend, whether it's a deep meditation, making love, good food. What it does to my mind is the same. It varies in intensity and it varies in duration. But it's my self-nature. Once the yogi gets this, then we can easily let go of the world. Let the mind come home. Shankara talks about not only being a full knower of the Supreme, but retiring into the Supreme. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Sakaram anritam vidhi nirakaram tu nishchalam etat tattvopadekshena napunar bhava sambhava. Know that which has form to be false, and the formless to be changeless. Through this spiritual instruction, you shall escape the possibility of rebirth.
So, if it's in the world of name and form, if it's objectively cognizable. If it's something perceived by senses, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, seeing. Nitya, illusion. Vaitatya, false. What's the word he uses for falseness?
Anritam.
Nityam.
Anritam here.
Amritam. Spell it, please.
Na ri ta ma. Anritam. I can look it up.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Okay. The root would be mrit for death, wouldn't it?
It's nrit, like dance, which is weird.
Oh. But the idea here is only yourself. Everything else is illusory. There's a famous saying in Yoga Vasishtha. Why try to cover the world in leather when you can wear shoes? So the yogi ceases trying to fix the world, ceases trying to control other people, ceases depending on other people for happiness or sorrow. Next one.
Yathaiva adhya ste rupam anta paristusa tathaivasmin sharirenta parita parameshwara. Just as a mirror exists inside and outside the image reflected in it, so the Supreme Self exists inside and outside this body.
Yes. So, do you incarnate into the dream? Are you in the dream or is the dream in you? So it seems, just like in the dream, that I'm in the body. And what the scripture is saying, no, the body's in you. We imagine the physical body in the same way we imagine the dream. This world is like a very long, very vivid. Next one.
Evam sarvatritam vyoma bahir antar yatha ghat gathe nityam nirantaram brahma sarva bhuta ganetha. Just as the same all-pervading space is inside and outside the jar, so the immutable and all-pervading Brahman exists in all things and being.
So what's interesting, I may be reasonably clear, I am not my body, I am not my feelings, I'm not my thoughts, but Mauricio, how could you say that to me? I think he is his body. That's interesting. So not only is the self not in my body. It's not anybody else's either. It's just images on the screen of consciousness, entertaining at best. Some of you used to find the world very funny. He would laugh at us all the time. He was an incredible mimic. You'd see somebody all bound up in some issue, and he mimicked them. Everybody would laugh. God help you if you were hypersensitive. You got over it. But what he allowed us to do is to see. So the space inside the cup is not really different than the space outside the cup. The self is not really in me. This body, mind, intellect is in the self. And it's really never touched. Next verse.
It's the transition to chapter 2. It's the first verse of chapter 2.
Okay. Chapter 2, verse 1.
Janaka uvacha aho niranjana shanto phodoham prakrite para itavantam aham kalam mohenaiva vidhambitam. Janaka said, "Oh, I am the taintless, serene, pure consciousness and beyond nature. So long I have spent my days bewildered by delusion."
So what we have here is the whole idea that Vedanta in and of itself is a means of knowledge. So if we've been successful, this enterprise is a gestalt. The teacher, a fit student, a subtle sattvic mind, and the scripture as a setu, as a bridge. And with our study of the scripture, we tune up the mind. So the mind is quiet. We invite you to look within, look behind your eyes, notice the knower, notice the knower. And then we tell you what you're experiencing while you're experiencing it. So your jnanam and your vijnanam, your understanding and your direct experience come together at the same time. Now, King Janaka's an A+ student. The first chapter is all the sadhana he had to do. So he opens the second chapter. What a fool I've been. I see. And that purpose from it. I never was a person. How could I have been so deluded? Rest of us will be plus 2. We have to continue to do tapas, continue to purify the mind, continue to let go, let go, let go. Then, when we're pure enough, the Vedanta is incredibly repetitive. Knowledge comes around again. This time, oh. Again. The aha, the subtle intellect. Pratyabhinya, recognition. That's when the subtle intellect becomes awake. Listen carefully. And that doesn't change the self either. Next one.
Yatha prakashaya yamyeko deham enam tatha jagat. Ato mama jagat sarvam yatha sarvam atva na cha kinchana. I, the one, illuminate this body and also reveal this universe. Therefore, mine is all this universe, or indeed nothing is mine.
So here he has these exclamations of what the language falls short, but it's an attempt to articulate the experience of the realized soul. We have these paradoxical viewpoints. One viewpoint, I am ever the eternal subject, the whole world is illusory. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Or we can look at it from the other standpoint. This entire phenomenal world is me. Sarvam Kalavidam Brahma. All this is verily Brahma. Don't let the apparent contradiction be problematic. When you imagine something, is that imagination other than you? And is it real? You imagine a strawberry. There's no second substance. But you definitely see an imaginary strawberry. You're not the strawberry, and the strawberry is nothing but you. You clearly watch how an imagination takes place. Then this verse becomes clear. Now, what's the difference between imagining the strawberry of my fancy, and the strawberry of my dreams? Dream has the additional element of ignorance. The dreamer does not know that the imagination is unreal. So also, the waker ego in this world of name and form does not know. It's all lila, like it's all pratibimba, reflection. It's all just the play of consciousness. Just like the waves cannot hurt or damage or improve the ocean, So also this play of consciousness adds nothing to me, detracts nothing. All right, I think we'll quit here. So we'll start on number 3, chapter 2,
Yes.
next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you.
Anritam is the negation of ritta, so disordered or unreal. Moni Williams gives you unreal. for it.
Rita means order.
Ritta is the old word, it's the Vedic word for dharma. It's also a word for the world. It's also the world for what's true. So, or season is the modern version of it. But it's the word, like unritam would be untrue. So that's the definition that's given by Apte and Moni.
And this was anuritam.
Unritam. Because the positive is ritta.
Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you all in Zoom land. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
And thank you, Mauricio. Thank you.